is a graph. It's a representation of what our lives are designed to be. Linear. It's kind of like a video game. We progress through every stage of our lives, just simply hoping to get through to the next phase. Say, when we're in high school, we study hard to get to a good university, and when we're in university, we work hard to get a good job. But, you know, back to the video game analogy, oftentimes, every time we restart and every time we enter this new phase of life, everything just restarts. We lose all value. So this does bring us to the question, is our current system really developing us? Is it creating any value that will last long term? Are we making an impact? Now, I used to feel really constrained with this type of thinking, because growing up in a developing country, I've always been very aware of how our healthcare education and our healthcare system hasn't really been developed. So going home from school every day, I'd see facilities, watching the news every day after school, I'd see these pictures in disaster relief, and I know our community is really struggling with this, especially in less developed areas. Now, with this knowledge, I felt really sad knowing this because, you know, I felt like I couldn't do anything to help the community that has helped me develop into the person I am today. So yeah, I would always say I was too young to make an impact. I would always say I can't do anything, you know, I'm just still in high school, but at the end I did take the leap, and it's been great ever since. But knowing this, of course, I know that a lot of children, a lot of teenagers, a lot of young adults even, are still really daunted with the idea of facing their dreams head-on and tackling things at a young age. So I think the most common thing I get asked today is, how do you do these things when you're in high school? You're still young, how are you achieving all of these things? And yeah, it hasn't been an easy ride for sure. A lot of things I've had to navigate myself. But within this process of just experimenting and just getting to know myself and getting to know everything around me, along with understanding the world, I've learned a lot of things about the process of being young and inexperienced and growing up, really. So during this process of just learning and experiencing all of these things over the past few years, I've met a lot of older people, a lot of wiser people, a lot of people who are definitely smarter than me, and they've often given me a lot of life stories that oftentimes I felt like I couldn't relate to. They'd often tell me about, say, their 30 to 50 years of life experience in a certain field. They'd tell me about all of these stories from their younger days and feed me with a lot of wisdom, which of course has helped me. But at the end of the day, I realized that I can't give you guys that same wisdom. I can't give you guys the same knowledge that they have, because to put it frankly, my life has only begun. But I can tell you a little bit about my experience of being young and foolish. So today I'd just like to share with you guys 4 different things about my experience and how really being young and just being really inexperienced can give you an advantage rather than it being detrimental to your future. Or as I like to call it, the perks of being young and stupid. But, well, firstly, I'd like to talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Like any other regular teenager, I experienced the fear of missing out, the fear of somehow being secluded to the world. And when I was younger, this used to be in a more social setting, really. It used to be, so it used to be in a more social setting. Somehow, like, I was being left out from a crowd, like I was being left out in a community. When I was in elementary, I used to try really hard to fit in, to just get along with everyone, to somehow fit in within society. But as I grew older, it became more of a fear of not really having a contribution to this world, really. Like I said, a contribution to our current technology and science, and I felt somehow really left out of all of the action that's going on today, all of the innovation, all of the development going on, especially in the fields of computer science, in the fields of physics, which I was really passionate about, and I felt like I wasn't really contributing to our society by sitting down in class and just, you know, just sitting. And so for that reason, because I was really feeling like really secluded, which again, FOMO is kind of a feeling that's very specific to teenagers, and it's typically negative, but I rather harness this negative energy into just trying really hard and looking for experience rather than having these opportunities come to me and waiting. So I seeked out these opportunities, I created research by myself, And now that I have the privilege to really work in whatever I love, I've learned not to take it for granted because I know the process, how hard it is for young people to seek out these opportunities. So really, my first point is harness this negative energy into your positive energy. Secondly, I've learned that your lack of experience isn't a bad thing. Sure, like oftentimes when you first start out in this world, clearly you're going to be the least experienced person. You might be the dumbest in the room, like you're surrounded by a Shark Tank or some sort. While you're very new, you're very fresh, enthusiastic, but nevertheless, you're not familiar with this professional context. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because to put it this way, you're a blank slate. You don't know anything about what's going on in this world. You don't know much about this new career, this new path you're going to take, but you're a blank slate, and that's a good thing, because that means you have more room to develop yourself. You have more room to grow because you don't have a set skill set, you don't have a set mindset, you don't have a set perspective as to how this world works and what you want to do with it. So for that reason, you have more room to experiment. You have more space, if you will, in your wall to grow. You can explore new mindsets, you have the opportunity to develop a new perspective. In essence, you have the ability to mold yourself into whatever you want to be. Thirdly, at this stage in life, if you're young and you're still new to everything, to put it frankly, you have the privilege, if you will. You have the privilege to take more risks. So for this reason, I like to say that you can experiment with whatever you want. You have the ability to fail. You can fail at this point. Because to put it quite frankly, just what I like to do is that I like to treat this time of my life as somewhat like a trial period, because I'm not necessarily working professionally in the science. I'm not necessarily a professional, so for this reason, this is the time to make mistakes. You're very young, so go ahead, experiment, fail, make mistakes, and that's fine. Because at this stage in life, your mistakes won't be as consequential as, say, if you make them 20 years later. As you grow older, you have to seek for financial stability, you're going to be set in your career, and as you go higher and higher, you have more to lose. Well, people like me, and perhaps some of us here, we don't have much to lose as students just looking for our ways in life. So this is why, often when you're young, you're told to invest in stocks because you have room to lose. Well, and then as you grow older, you're told to invest in bonds and so on because, of course, you have more to lose and so on. So same applies to risk and whatever career you want to take on. You have all the room to lose. So if you want to fail now. Just think about if you're in university, your school years, all the stupid mistakes you made, all the tests you probably flunked and here and there, they're probably not as consequential now. Same applies with just exploring with what you want to do. This is the time to experiment. And often taking these risks and they can lead to incredible rewards. Like, I never expected when I started doing research that I would be in a place, in the place where I am today, and oftentimes, sometimes these pay off, you never know. But at this point, you don't have anything to lose by trying. Lastly, for my last point, I'd just like to start with this quote by Giacomo Leopardi, who's an Italian poet and considered one of the greatest Italian poets during the 19th century, as well as a philosopher. And he says that children find everything and nothing, while men find nothing and everything. And now I'd like to just talk about creative limitations. So, as young people, we do have less facilities, we have less knowledge, we have less faculties as those who are perhaps working in a professional setting in much more developed areas. They have had the experience to back them up. They have co-workers, etc. Well, we're somehow left to fend for ourselves. But because of these creative limitations, you have to work harder to bridge the gap between where you are and where these professional scientists or economists or whatever you want to work as begin. Now, during your work for this gap, because of the fact that you have to work harder and that you have to strive to even get to this starting point, you get to appreciate the process more because of how difficult because of how much you had to go through to get to this point, really. So let's explain this through like an analogy. Say you want to order pizza. Say you want to buy pizza. So what do you do when you want pizza? You'd call the delivery guy, and in 10, 20, 30 minutes your pizza will arrive at your house, and then you're good. You have the pizza, life moves on. But say all the pizza shops in town have closed and you still want pizza. So what you'd have to do is that you'd have to go to the supermarket, you'd have to toss your own dough, you'd have to bake it, and sometimes things don't turn out right and sometimes things don't turn out as well as, you know, what someone in a pizza shop would create. But that's fine. And when you do taste your own pizza, you look at it and, you know, it's similar to science or research or like whatever you want to create. You see a manifestation of the results, and since you know the process and because you had to work hard to get to where you are today, seeing the manifestation of your results is somehow more rewarding. Like, it's like working, like as you said, it's like working for a pizza, and then when you eat it, you get to really taste how much you work for it, and you get to enjoy the process, you get to appreciate the process while doing so through this disadvantage. Furthermore, you get to really get a glimpse of what it's like to work in these different fields. You get to see whether it works out for you, whether it doesn't. You get a better view, if you will, of like whether you want to work in this or not in the future. And you get to appreciate what these people do for you to create this world better. You get to identify what makes our world better, and it does really give you an appreciation of everybody in your daily lives. Like, for example, for me, I just like to share a story. So when I was in the early stages of my research, I didn't have access to a microcentrifuge, so I had to build one out of cardboard and acrylic and these mini controllers called Arduino Unos for those of you who are engineering or computer science students. So I had to create all of my equipment. I had to create a microcentrifuge, I had to create a spectrometer, etc. And yeah, sure, they did create a lot of uncertainty in my experiments, but in the end, you have to find a way. You can find a way or you can make one. So I'd like to leave this TED Talk with just 2 points for you. Firstly, don't afraid to be young and stupid while you still can. This stage of life, you can still experiment. You don't have to pretend to be some professional person you're not, because you can be an idiot and you can still create amazing things in your life. You know, like being immature and being young isn't necessarily a disadvantage. It's just a different way of thinking. And in a world that's so monotonic like ours, we need different ways of thinking. So go ahead, be stupid, be experimental, go crazy, and oftentimes that can be a benefit for you. Well, my second point is kind of contradictory to my first one. So my second point is don't be afraid to grow up. So it's don't be afraid to be young, don't be afraid to grow up. It's confusing. But anyways, my point is back to our original linear graph. Don't let other people plan out your life for you. Go into what you want. If you want to create things, if you just want to delve into a job and just go ahead and work in the field, go ahead and do so. Don't be afraid to be more mature. And just because you're sitting in a high school bench or you're still sitting in a university lecturing room doesn't mean you don't have the capability to create what these adults are doing for us. So that's my point. So what I'm trying to say here is live in your own time. If you want to go at a slow pace and embrace your youth, go ahead. If you feel like you're ready to delve into the real world and be mature and create all of these amazing things, go ahead, live in your own time. Everybody has their own time zone, everyone has their own time pace. Don't let other people dictate things for you. Just live in your own time and the future is yours to make. Thank you.